get the play together. Everyone's rehearsing for the play,
Right.
and then the queen comes in and she, disapproves, right?
Brilliant. That is so funny. Okay, I am so into that. And that obviously probably contributed to your love of drag now. Was that your first role as a woman?
Um, I in high school, well, I would say yes. In high school, we did. I don't know if you've heard of the Complete History of America abridged.
Yes, I have heard of it. They
Which
tried
yeah,
to do it
which
at our
is very
school and
fun.
apparently it was not pulled off.
Really? Oh
Yeah.
damn. It's a fun show. It's like they did that, and it's like three guys who did it. They also did the complete works of Shakespeare abridged, and they wrote it and starred and everything.
Yes,
We
that
did
one
it
I
with like a
know.
cast of like 12 or something, right? So I played a bunch of people, and at one point I played Lucille Ball very briefly. So I had like a wig and everything on,
Brilliant.
which was
Brilliant.
very fun.
Yeah.
But this was the first like, yeah, this was I had a whole like I had a giant gown that I had to be like two people had to help me walk out onto stage with, and then
Oh,
I went by myself and
you were in
the whole
high
thing.
drag, high whore
Oh
drag.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the highest.
Oh, I love that. And oh, that's so amazing. Like I again, I cannot help but be jealous. Like there would not even be, even if we were doing Shakespeare, the idea of like a drag role, it was ever
Yeah.
so slightly taboo in my little like mountain town in Colorado. It's like they did a couple Shakespeare plays, and it's like if somebody had to play a character who was not of their gender, like they just made the character that gender, which I always like, that's weird. Like just let, if it's a male role, like let the girl play a boy as a fun like exploratory thing, like I know they did the Tempest and then they mixed around a few roles in Macbeth, but then they literally like they would be rewriting Shakespeare to like align to make it cisgender. It was like
It's
so
funny how like a lot
odd.
of Shakespeare is gender bendy. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Well, especially like the Tempest is a huge one. We ended up
Right.
reading that and like doing a deep reading in my senior year of high school, and I would tell my teacher, I'd be like, this play is gay, very very gay, and he was like a straight male English teacher, and so he was like, I guess sorta there are people that have that perspective, and I was like, no, this is gay.
Wow. Wow.
And so it was, yeah, it was very much like it was ever so slightly taboo, like to the point that yeah, the way that I can best characterize our theater department is that the Vagina Monologues by Eve Ensler.
Yes.
They're very stereotypical ultra feminist piece of writing.
Right. Right.
She went on to write a slightly more young adult series of stories and poems called "I Am an Emotional Creature," which was very much like adapted for high school age girls, and it talked a lot about. It was really cool because it talked a lot about like sex trafficking and stuff, and it was stories of women around the world, whereas Vagina Monologues was very much like
Oh
white women.
wow.
And so they
Wow.
talked about, there was like a whole monologue in there about a girl who was running from sex trafficking, and all of these like very very deep, very cool topics that like girls absolutely should be learning about like by high school age. And so they decided to put it on with our theater department, and they in particular decided to present it for Diversity Day, which was apparently something that was needed in our very white community, where they would bring it, and it was a really cool day. They would bring in like it was basically like you would go around to stations and pick out little classes that you would do. It's like there was an African dancing class, there was a person talking about social justice,
We had
there
one of
was,
those. Oh my god.
yeah, and there was like a Holocaust survivor speech, and all of these cool things. And then part of it they wanted to do Emotional Creature by Eve Ensler, and parents started writing in letters and throwing a fit because like they thought it was inappropriate for specifically a feminist piece, a feminist play, to be put on at the
Oh
school,
my
because
god.
literally I think something along the lines of like a dad said not everybody believes in feminism, like that was the argument. Like it's so shameful deeply. And so like eventually they did end up putting it on a couple times, which I was very glad to be able to see it. It was quite emotional, it was very well performed, it was lovely. But they eventually like had to ixnay it. They were like, no, we
Wow.
can't do it, because the parents were throwing such a fit, because like they talked about like genital mutilation like on stage in very like veiled play theater terms. Like it wasn't
Right.
even that profane. They were just like, women being empowered and our daughters talking about it, no. And so that was very much like the situation that I was coming from, and so I was dying to like put
Wow.
any kind of queerness into our theater, and it just wasn't just wasn't working. They wouldn't take it.
It just wasn't there. Wow. Did you have books banned too at your school?
I see. That's the thing. Is there was one or two teachers who, or not teachers. There was a couple parents who were like not okay with Catcher in the Rye. Like it was very much parents being like, we get to decide curriculum. And luckily when it came to the English department, like we had enough like hard liberal cool English teachers that were like, no, screw that, this is part of like national curriculum, you can't touch this, essentially. But they sure tried. Like they were censoring the hell out of things. And so me, like being this queer person in the performing arts at that school and being very, very public and in people's faces, I was well known, I think. To the point where like we did Legally Blonde, and they cast me, the theater teacher, in what I now consider to be a microaggression, cast me as Warner Huntington III, the straight male like ex-boyfriend in Legally Blonde, specifically because she wanted to challenge me to not play gay. And I was like, okay, I guess I can do that. And they sing the song, Is He Gay or European? And one of Warner's lines in it is, they say, is he gay or European? And I say, well, hey, don't look at me. And everyone in the school knew I was a fag. So they lost their shit. Like, they thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And it was, like, but it all came from this, like, somewhat homophobic place. So anyway, enough about me. Please tell me, like, yeah, how did you got to play Queen Elizabeth, and obviously theater and everything bleeds into queer culture. Tell me about how you got from college theater to drag, to Masha Potato herself.
So, a couple courses that I took in college were very instrumental for me. I was introduced to from a woman who's from Chicago, who had a theater company called Red Moon that doesn't exist anymore. I was introduced to what's called devised theater, which is like essentially, you're given a prompt or a word, or maybe you're basing it off of a book or anything you want. I could take an album of family photos, and you're taking something and making a theater piece out of it, right?
Oh, cool.
And sort of asking like, what does it want to be? What does it want to become? And so I did a couple like classes and a couple workshops where it was just like, we'd come in and she'd say, okay, for the next 2 weeks, you're going to partner up. You're creating a 5-minute piece that has to have a blackout at some point. It has to have a surprising element. It has to use music and the color red. And you're like, okay, great. Then you have 2 weeks and you're like, okay, great. What kind of thing do we want to do? Maybe you write a little bit, maybe you talk or listen to music or collaborate with someone. And 2 weeks later, you have this 5-minute piece that's unlike anything you could have ever come up with before, right?
Right. Oh, I'm obsessed with, as somebody who did not get into the actual college experience and will revisit it when I am financially and emotionally ready. I am so enamored with like what I hear about theater programs and like all of the experimental theater work, and I just love the premise of like, let me place constraints on you, and then it turns into like something beautiful and artistic. So like what was one of those pieces that came out of it?
What's funny about that is you're describing what my teacher would call exquisite pressure. It's sort of like,
yes,
you're existing within these limits and you're able to create something. A friend of mine, my best friend in college, and I took the class together. Her name is Abby. And we came up with this piece for the final, which she was like, for the final, we were sort of limited to in the building or in the classroom or in the School of Theater. For the final, she said, okay, it can be anywhere you want within a 10-minute drive. I'm like going to rent a van for the class, and here are the parameters, right? Here's the piece, and do it. And we, I went to Illinois State University. We have, in the summer, the Illinois Shakespeare Festival is attached to the university.
Okay.
But it's down the road. It's like 8 minutes down the road, but it's got this beautiful, like, old style castle and this big outdoor theater and these grounds that are like immaculately maintained all year round. They have flowers and like fountains and all this cute little stuff. So we went there and did this piece about a couple falling in love, and we sort of like meet at one place and then run to the next. And as we're running, we're changing so people can't see us, and we're getting older and older and older. And then I pass away and she's at my grave at the end of it.
Oh my God, beautiful. That is,
Yeah.
that is so cool. I
Right.
should have gone to
Right.
college. I should be in debt over this. That is freaking incredible. And I'm fascinated by, like, yeah, that ties into drag so beautifully, like talking about the pressure and everything, because it's like a themed drag show is basically being like, what outfits do I have? Here's a theme.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the size of the
Mm-hmm.
stage that I have to like deal with. What am I able to do? So that, like, yeah, that carries over so beautifully.
Yeah, and I what was funny is that in my head I was always like, I'm gonna be a, I'm gonna be a working actor. I want to be a professional actor. That's what I want to do. I want to do like plays, new plays. I want to do
And then
theater.
you get to be like
And
23 or something, and you're like, who is just an actor?
well,
You
well, funny
know?
too, because like it's like going and auditioning and like being told what to do and like trying to get a role that feels fulfilling is like hard and a lot of work
Yeah.
and like not easy. And yet drag is like, what's fun about drag is, to me it feels like theater, right? It feels like I can just go, you know what, like I want to do a show. I want to do a SpongeBob show, and then I
Right.
text my friends and
Which
I say,
you
"We
have
to do
done,
it."
yes.
And I put it together. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's
It's
that easy.
it's kind of the inverse of it, where it's like you get to create your own role and you simply have to find a stage to put it on, whereas like the theater
Exactly.
community is like, we have all of these stages but you have to compete for a role, and then instead with drag you get to bring, yeah, you bring the theater and the stage is there for you.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. And so your time being at school in Chicago, you went out into gay nightlife, found drag. Tell me about tell me about those first drag experiences. I love to ask, like, first drag show you saw and then first drag you did, and tell me all of the embarrassing like details about it, because it's never good.
Oh God. Well, so at school in college, we had a student drag show every year. So
Oh,
it
I
was at the
love those. I like my favorite shows ever have been the ones at colleges.
and they're so fun too, because it's like,
Yes.
what's fun about those audiences is because they don't get to go to bars unless they're, sneaking in or something. They're so appreciative and so excited about the drag that they're
Yes.
just like, they're vocal as hell. Do you know what I mean?
Losing
They're
their
so
shit.
fun.
Well, because
Yeah.
the couple I've done have been at CSU in Colorado, and they would fill a 2,000 seat auditorium.
Yes, that's what this one was like 1,500 people.
Amazing. So that's the first drag you saw.
Well, yes. So I saw that, and then I was like, okay, next year I want to do that, right?
Yeah.
And what's fun about that is they had students, and then they had local queens, because there's a small scene in Bloomington, which is the next town over.
Right.
And then they always had like, they always tried to get one bigger name. Now they've had Shay, they've had Naomi, they've had
That's so funny
Shangela.
how they have the same structure at all of these colleges. Because the last one that I did at CSU was with Shay.
Oh wow, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
she
It's
came
like,
to visit. She was very private. She did her own thing, but she was there.
yeah, of course, right.
So
that was the first one I saw.
And so what who were the special guests there? Who were the gals that you got to witness? Was it anyone we know now?
I can't remember. No,
Okay.
because it was like this was like on like, it was like the third season of Drag Race. So I remember
Right.
what was funny is at the time, so they had a lot of local girls who were like very old school and very like in the dressing room, like wouldn't look at you like you were a booger, like you didn't exist to them.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
and then what
very
was
well.
funny is like the next month we had like Shangela came and performed and did like a Q&A just like as herself separately, which was fun.
That is very fun. I think Shangela was one of the previous guests at CSU as well. She's hoofing her way around the country.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
around Puerto Vallarta
The
as
world.
well, from what I hear.
Oh, is she really?
Yes. But
I'd only seen Silky and Vanjie without their
Silky,
masks on.
Vanjie,
Oh,
Shangela. There
not
have been
you.
quite a few of the Drag Race cast that have fallen to the COVID drama. Most spectacularly Trinity the Tuck, and she didn't even have to go anywhere.
Oh my god!
She didn't even have to like move to get pulled into
Girl,
this icon.
I'm just
of COVID
tired.
drama.
I'm like, can you stop talking?
I know exactly. Like I would love if she just crystallized her career as it is and disappeared.
Right.
Because it can only get worse from here. But we will, you know what? There's always time for Drag Race. The podcast always circles back around to this, so we can get to that later. Then tell me about your first drag performance. What was the song? What was the look? How well did it go? I have to know.
Okay, so there was, before I did the drag show, there was this every Friday night in the school theater. There was this event called Theater of Ted, which